All right. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Accuracy in America, the early edition. Those that'll watch this will be seeing this as a pre-recorded show. So we're up early today, but I'm Don Irvine, joined once again by my co-host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, and those dog-faced pony soldiers.
That's right. All right. We'll do a little mini weather report here because had a big hurricane / tropical storm, Ida, coming through I guess it's the Gulf, right? Up through Louisiana. Louisiana got hit really hard again. I see that there's reports of like 1 million people without power. There's a clean water issue, and it could take weeks to get some of this back up operating here. It's not a good situation.
Right in the path. He was in Hammond, which is just on the north side of Lake Pontchartrain, and she has decamped to Shreveport, where I grew up in North Louisiana. And she says it's going to be 3 weeks before they get the power back.
Whew, man, I feel for those people. These things are happening with a lot of frequency, but I don't know. I mean, I guess, I think you remember Jerry Cave, who had decamped from Maryland to New Orleans, and now he decamped from New Orleans to South Carolina. He's probably. Yeah. I think there were some crime issues that he was concerned about in New Orleans, but I think the weather probably was in the back of his mind too, because New Orleans can get hit pretty hard too, a lot of cases. So I think, I love that I was thinking about New Orleans. It's like, I do love the town and some of the vibe and the music and just the feeling, but boy, I don't want to be there in a bad weather situation.
Right. I've been there. We were there. We were in Mississippi for Camille, and I remember we were on the beach, playing on the beach. I was a little kid, I was about 6 years old or whatever it was, 7 years old, and my dad came like, "We're leaving right now." I'm like, "We're leaving? We're on the beach playing." "Come on, Dad," and he's like, "Oh, we're leaving right now." So we left, and sure enough, the next day, Camille was really one of the worst ones ever. Before Katrina, Camille was the bad one. It slammed the Gulf Coast. There were people in Biloxi who tried to ride it out on top of a hotel. There were 63 of them. 61 of them died. Just a terrible tragedy. New Orleans under 6-7 feet of water. I remember watching people ride motorboats, not just rowboats, but motorboats through the city of New Orleans, which is a little below sea level. So when this happens, it's prone to flooding. In the last 5 years, there's been 2 major storms that just destroyed Lake Charles, Louisiana, which is southwest Louisiana, headed toward Texas, only about a 2-hour drive to Houston. And this one did not hit Lake Charles, which was a real break, because that was a town that probably couldn't take it. Wouldn't have been able to respond. But they're, Hammond, Slidell, that part of the world, they have a lot of work to do there. But it doesn't look like a whole lot of people were killed. And it looks like something that they've dealt with before.
Yeah. Well, this is the thing about America. As I kind of look at the whole map and say, where would I like to retire to? That map gets smaller because I think about these weather events. I'm like, yeah, we don't want this. We don't want this. And, more, even though Maryland's politics are bad and their taxes are kind of high, there's a lot of conveniences here. And from a weather standpoint, we don't have it anywhere as bad as a lot of areas do. We don't get the severe snowstorms. We don't have the wildfire problem and the drought problem really in the West, and we don't have these big storms coming in off the coast. Whether or not you're going to be in North Carolina slammed, or whether or not you're in Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana, they'll also get slammed. Houston can get slammed and things like that. Something like, maybe I'm actually in a pretty safe place overall, in the long run. But yeah, people will, unfortunately, America's a big country. People have to live somewhere, and a lot of times you will wind up living in a path of some event, whether or not it's Tornado Alley or a hurricane event or whatever. So it's very unfortunate.
We were Mary Catherine and I went to Mass when we were down there in Hammond, and one of the petitions, one of the prayer of the faithful during the Mass, the priest said, can we be delivered from hurricane, or be, enable us to stand up to it if we get it, right? And we've heard that before. Daytona Beach, South Florida, Northern California, talking about wildfires and so forth, right? So when you go to these churches and you hear, what's important to those parishes, it's like, it's the hurricanes, it's the storms, and and like you say, I guess the remnants of it will be here in DC today. We're supposed to get 5 or 6 inches of rain, which is a big mess for DC, and parts of the DC area have been really inundated. For instance, and it's kind of weird what's going on there. National Airport is way above average and almost to its yearly total of rain, and we have 4 months to go. And but the other airports are right around average or a little below. Dulles and BWI, where they measure rain in our area, right? But National is way above, so it's kind of interesting, like where it fell. But but our things are manageable. If we're out of power, it's not for long, and I think we get a little extra attention and love on that because the national government is here and so forth.
Right. Yeah. No, I mean, just before, well, we'll move on here, but yeah, I mean, in terms of the rain, I was a little concerned because it was probably about 2 or 3 o'clock this morning. It just came down in droves. I mean, it was noisy, thunder, lightning, and it was just pouring like buckets. It started drying up by 6 o'clock, but I think we're going to see this come and go throughout the day. So there's a lot more rain yet to come. But yeah, I thought, great. Why do I have to get the hurricane remnants on a day when I'm supposed to be outside?
Oops.
Yeah.
The other thing about that, though, is incredible resilience of the American people, right? So how is it getting dealt with? It's not really a government response yet. It's neighbors going out in their little boats, rescuing each other and providing each other home and comfort and all that stuff. It's a nice little story of the things the people do about it.
Yeah, no, I think that's good. And I think people have to be reminded of that too, Brian, because we have gotten so far away on a lot of things because of politics have divided us in a lot of ways. Family members don't speak to each other, and neighbors won't speak to each other over politics, which is pretty silly to me to have to tear things apart to that basis. But when these natural disasters, it's good to see people pulling together. I think that is that kind of that American exceptionalism, just the individualism, things that we do for each other. When it all comes down to it, we will help each other, which is great.
Right.
And
that's right.
That's what makes this country great. All right. Another disaster, which was a different kind of disaster. Joe Biden doesn't think it's a disaster. He thinks Afghanistan was a success. He thinks this whole pullout and this withdrawal was a success. I'd like him to talk to explain to, I need a better explanation how this is a success when we lost 13 service members and a whole bunch of Afghans died as well. And it was a complete mess trying to get out of the country. And we have now turned the country over to the Taliban. I don't understand what Biden is doing here. Please explain this to me.
Well, he wanted a photo op of this was over on September 11th. 20 years after the original September 11th, we were out of Afghanistan. We're done with that. Well, it wasn't really time, right? We weren't really ready to pull it off, and I think that's why Trump kind of slowed it down. He had aspirational goals of trying to end it before fighting season started this summer. Biden paid no attention to that. He paid no attention to his advisors saying this was a bad time to do it or that we weren't ready. But then the advisors were not well informed either, right? They came 3 or 4 days before the country was taken and said, "Oh, our army that we've spent billions and billions standing up, training and equipping and so forth, they might not last 3 months." From the point they said that, they didn't last 3 days, right? So they had no idea how overwhelmed the Afghan National Army was, and how incapable they were of fighting or unwilling or whatever it is you want to say. And it was overrun. I mean, he said, there's the interview in July where he's like, it's not going to get overrun. We're not going to, go have helicopters off the roofs, sneaking people out of the country. That's precisely what happened, right? Exactly what he defined as failure occurred, right? But somehow it doesn't represent failure because he doesn't want it to. The thing yesterday was just framing. He's he's telling you night when it's night when it's day and so forth. It's an attempt at political rehabilitation for him and his administration. And make no mistake, this is a whole of government failure, right? All over government, defense, state, people who resettle, so forth. We failed at every level on this. And I think the thing to look at, it'll take a time before we settle on the real problem here. But the thing to look at here is, the federal government is basically not very competent in a lot of things right now, right? It's failing. It's too big. It's, when things get too big and bloated, it's hard for them to be effective. And that's where we're going with the federal government. And the quote expertise we rely on is not delivering us solid, reliable answers.
Yeah, I seem to recall there was a lot of criticism of President Trump about leadership and a lot of these types of things. But is this not a complete failure of leadership on the part of the president and his administration? I mean, this is ridiculous. And who is buying this framing?
Well, I mean, the Democrats are. You can see them starting to try to dig in their heels and defending. Oh, well, they're doing it. They allied the topic, right? The topic is, why did you have to do this now? Why did you have to do it when we weren't ready? Why did you have to do it when your own government was not ready to respond, right? And you had no idea what the expectations are, what was coming down the pike, right? So, they don't, their failures started before that, right? They didn't care about any of that. He was determined. So now what he talks about in these speeches is, well, yeah, we're out of Afghanistan. We're out of Afghanistan. Yeah, okay, we're out of Afghanistan, but we've created a mess. We've humiliated ourselves. We've changed the geopolitical game for the worse in ways that we can't even predict. They're so bad and potentially catastrophic, that we're shuddered to even think about what it is. Like, how would you like to be living in Taiwan right now? Your lifeline, your support, your source of protection is the United States. The United States is not very good at the protection game right now.
Right. And I think you've mentioned this before in past shows, just in terms of, we've had a kind of a history of where, America has your back type of a thing like that. But I think that has been totally blown up. I mean, if you're Great Britain, France, Germany, I mean, you're Taiwan, like you just said, if you're any of these countries that have been trying to, ally with us and help us in various ways, you are kind of questioning exactly what's going on here. What is the Biden strategy? If we, do we dare agree to do anything cooperatively with them, internationally? Because, it seems that Biden is willing to pull the plug and leave everybody naked and bare, and yet still think it's a success. This is just, this is such a disaster. This is such an embarrassment to the United States. I can't even fathom this. I mean, I was all of 16 years old, and you're almost the same age, when Vietnam, fell and the war was over. And that was a very embarrassing chapter for us to see that, because we could have won that war. We were actually winning parts of that war, but the media and others, they played a heavy part in twisting the minds of people to say, we've got to get out of there. This military intelligence failure in terms of, I still can't figure out why they thought that the Afghan army was ready to basically take over, and hold back the Taliban. It just didn't seem reasonable to me. And I'm just a layperson.
Right. Well, so as for Vietnam, we didn't lose Vietnam. The Republic of South Vietnam lost Vietnam. When we left, all the territory we'd been asked to hold was held. It was held by our allies that we were holding it for. We kill, you don't want to measure it this way, but, we killed about almost 3.5 million of them. They killed 58,000 of us. We drove them out of wherever they went, right? And when we left, it took another 17 months or so before the Republic of South Vietnam fell. I mean, those helicopters you saw, they were just evacuating final embassy personnel. And it was, it didn't look good and so forth. I'll give you that. But, it's not comparable to this at all. This was just abandoned ship and, begging terrorists to let women get to the airport, walked off from the dogs. What's with the Democrats abandoning their dogs, right? I mean, what kind of creep does that, right? Mario Cuomo, when he, whichever one, who was it? Andrew, when he resigned as governor of New York, he just departed and left his dog there. And now, Biden left all the dogs that are, military service dogs. The guys that handle these dogs and depend on them to stay alive, get real close to those dogs. He made some dire enemies there. Now, I guess, private groups and people who, with a brain in their head, have gone over there and tried to clean this up and gotten the dogs out the best they can. My understanding is most of them are out, but that's despicable. I mean, that's just, a disregard for life that we have never been associated with, even in Vietnam, in this country.
Yeah, so let me ask you about this, because I mean, there are calls, or seem to be calls about Milley, Austin, and even Biden that they should resign. I mean, do you think any or all of them should be out or leave, be pushed out? Anything?
Well, whichever one of them you hold responsible for saying that army could last 90 days when it couldn't last 90 hours, that's who I would point the finger at. I don't think the Secretary of State has acquitted himself well here at all. Not sure what will happen there. These guys, they're going to close ranks. They're trying to paper it over already. They're trying to make it look like, we did what we set out to do. It might have been a little messy, but now the mess is behind us. The mess is not behind us. You were talking about Europe. If you are, like, for instance, Russia has been put back in charge of distributing energy in Europe now, thanks to Biden canceling our pipelines and approving theirs, right? So, what's he doing there? So, if Russia starts squeezing them on fuel, what do? They better just give in to the demand or work something out themselves with Russia, because they can't count on us to fight for them. They can't count on us to stand up for human rights. They can't count on us to make sure that energy is distributed all over the country and people don't freeze to death, because we've shown, we leave and we don't even know what's going on behind us. So, for 4 years, for the next 3 years, all bets are off. You can't depend on Washington for anything because the people in charge don't really know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, I know some Republicans are calling for, like they're using the I word, the impeachment word on Biden. I mean, that won't go anywhere. It's not something that will gain any traction really anywhere. But it is just a major failing of Biden. 7 months, a little over 7 months into his administration, very embarrassing. This 7 month plus period here has just been pretty rocky overall. It has not been the kind of it's not been the kind of thing I would have wanted. If I was an incoming president to have. Just too many things have gone wrong.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I was going to say is if you it's not just this. If you put this with the highest inflation, 2 months now, highest inflation ever recorded since we've measured inflation. The loss of energy independence, gas prices up $1.50 a gallon, which feeds a lot of the inflation, economic collapse, mess at the border, mess with COVID, inconsistent, brain dead policy on COVID. Then, you put that with this and you're from afar and you say 7 months, that's a pretty impressive record of incompetence, right? So, if that's what you've told the world in 7 months, and we have a long way to go with this guy. It's 41 more months, and people know that 41 more months we're going to be run, absent in impeachment or 25th Amendment or something like that. We're going to be run by somebody who doesn't know what door to walk in, forgets names, falls asleep with the Israeli prime minister meeting. An old dude who doesn't belong running a country, right? We're stuck with him.
Yeah, no, that's the voter. The voters voted, and that's what they say happens. So
Yeah,
we get what we get.
allegedly that's what they said. I mean, who knows?
I will push back just a tiny bit on, I don't think I don't know that we're ready to say that it's an economic mess yet, because the economy's still moving along. There is a danger, though, because of the things that are happening here. There is a danger for us that, in 6 to 9 months or something from now, potentially facing some far greater consequences where things start to fall off a little bit if the administration, if the government doesn't get a better hold of this. Is inflation really transitory, or is it going to be a longer term problem? If it is really going to be a little more permanent, and we're going back into the kind of inflationary period of the late 70s and early 80s, then we have a problem. If we can't get more people back to work, we've got a problem. And we're still dealing with these issues where Biden is not helping. The administration is not helping us really try to figure out where we are, because they keep kicking these cans down the road, whether it's, student loan repayment or the eviction moratorium. I mean, they've kind of lost on the eviction moratorium, but they're still looking for ways to push that down and try to keep that from happening. But these are such artificial measures. I mean, I'm seeing more and more stories about people, who are living in places. They're renting, but they're actually making money. They're actually earning a living, but because of the eviction moratorium, they're not paying their rent because there's no threat. Well, the landlord takes it on the
People don't understand that. There's a couple of things going on there. First of all, that's a thing where households are taking on, whatever your rent is, $1,000 to $3,000 a month of extra debt. You're talking about like the national credit card is way overcharged, right? This is everybody's personal thing. And I mean, when it comes off, you don't just owe next month's rent. It doesn't go away, right? You owe all that back rent, right? So now you have a big problem with your landlord. The other question is, how does this end? How did the Democrats think this was going to end? Okay. So, at some point you're going to have to turn it off. You can't just say no more rent will be paid in America. No more mortgage payments will be paid in America, right? It can't be like that. No one will lend you money for a home. No one will rent you any property if they know that you can't, get paid, right? So we can all never move again, and why does the landlord bother to fix it if you can't get any money for it, right? So then, things fall into disrepair, so you're basically ordering the country to keep living where it's living, not move, and, let your house fall into repair because, the landlord's not going to fix it. So, I mean, it had to end somewhere, and they just keep saying, no, it can't end. Don't let it end. These people can't pay rent. And it's like, at some point, you got to do something, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a ticking time bomb. I mean, even what you're talking about. I mean, the other thing to throw into this mix is just that if you've got this eviction moratorium, I mean, there's no reason for anybody to build housing for rentals, right?
Right.
Then where are the people that are trying to move or trying to actually get a home? They have no place. I mean, people are going to live with their parents forever, and raise. None of this makes any sense at all. But the Democrats never think about that. All right, so we have a short show today, so we need to wrap this up. So we'll go into our 2-minute phase already.
Go into 2 minutes. Well, let me see. I did want to say, so Fairfax County has said now that athletes have to be vaccinated to participate in sports, starting with the winter season. There was a case at a professor at George Mason who sued and got the court to agree that he personally did not have to take a vaccine because he had enough antibodies and so forth already. So there's some talk about, in Fairfax County about trying to raise some of these points and seeing, how far that precedent goes. But that's one of the things to look for.
Yeah, let me just ask you this quick question as we wrap up here too. What effect do you think all the vaccination / COVID, whatever protocols are having an effect even in professional sports? Because we just saw Urban Meyer allude to, the cuts that he made to get down to the roster. Some of this was apparently based on vaccination, status and things like this, and Cam Newton got cut by the Patriots, and he's not vaccinated as far as we know. And teams have gotten hit with these COVID issues, where they got to put the athletes into the protocol, and that takes them offline for a while. So, is this going to be an ongoing thing? I mean, how do you judge them who's coached a lot of kids even?
At some point the fever on this has to break, and people have to realize that, COVID's not a death sentence. Most of the people who have it can't give it to anyone. You're not actually contagious for very long. We don't, where is the research on nailing down, like how long do these people really need to be isolated? And because it's not as long as we're doing it, we're way overdoing the isolation. So, I think that cooler heads at some point are going to prevail in this, and that the policy is going to start being driven by science. It hasn't even begin yet, but you can see the level of anger out there that it's coming.
All right, I will end on a little more somber note. Unfortunately, a couple things. So, one, yesterday I found out yesterday morning that a friend of mine from church had passed away suddenly. He had just been diagnosed with lung cancer. He was 63, and he hadn't even really started the treatments yet. It's a little bit unclear as to exactly what happened here yesterday. Apparently, he may have fallen and I don't know if he hit his head or whatever, but anyway, he passed away. It's really unfortunate. Left behind a wife and a daughter and her and all. And my thoughts and prayers go out to that family. Totally unexpected. Really good guy. Just someone I've known and worked with a lot within our own faith for many years. And my wife has worked with him in church, actually in a nursery setting, which was a fabulous experience for all of them. And then also for the passing of Ed Asner. Ed Asner was an unabashed liberal. So politically, I wouldn't agree with him on anything. But he was a pretty darn good actor. Remember from his Mary Tyler Moore days, his Lou Grant days, and he kept working. The guy was an old curmudgeon, but he would pop up in all kinds of places, kind of the crotchety old man here, including the Disney movie, The Up, which was fabulous. So rest in peace to Ed Asner. You are a fine actor, and you left a mark here in this world. So
yeah. Also, I thought they captured what an editor at a newspaper is like. He captured that as well as anybody ever has in TV.
That's true. I mean, that's actually right. I mean, it was a very realistic experience about a newsroom, I think. So it was a good, you got a good feel for that, which people don't usually get a good feel for. All right, everyone. Thank you for joining us on this brief edition. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. We're praying for those that are in Louisiana and other parts that have been affected by hurricane and tropical storm Ida. Hopefully you guys can get back on your feet sooner rather than later. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world, and we're seeing a lot of that now in terms of the resilience and the help that people are giving each other. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week where we will be live. All right. Thanks a lot, everyone.